On today's episode, why your job is literally killing you. I'm Jeremy Fisher. This is The Awakening. There's a term in literature called in medias res. In Latin, it means into the middle of things. It basically describes the act of a story starting right in the middle. Hamlet begins with the death of Hamlet's father. The movie Fight Club opens to Brad Pitt's character holding a gun in Edward Norton's mouth. There's no backstory, there's no character introductions, there's no lead up to the action. We just get dropped right into the story. It's up to you and me to figure out what's going on in the story, who the characters are, and why they're in the predicament they're in. You and I were born into this world in medias res. We were dropped right into cultures, governments, monetary systems, and economies that were set up by people who existed long ago and aren't even around anymore. The US, for example, was founded by the founding fathers who haven't been alive for hundreds of years. Yet the government we live in today operates by the rules that they set up. You and I get born into this world, and we have to figure out what those rules are. We even live our entire lives by them. What's nice about that is we don't have to spend our entire lives building and setting up systems. Other people have already done that, and we can build upon their work to live our lives. What's not nice about that, though, is that we often find ourselves stuck in the middle of stories that were written by people who didn't fully understand how the world could work because they didn't know that the world would work that way. In other words, we can get stuck in bad stories. What's important is that we figure that out as early as possible and start living our own story. And this has never been more true than now when it comes to stress in the workplace. In 1975, Business Week released an article that would describe what the office of the future would look like. Computers were set to turn the office world upside down. Repetitive tasks like typing out memos on a typewriter, printing dozens of copies, and having them hand-delivered around the office would be replaced by word processing and electronic mail. Employees would simply need to, quote, call up documents from files on a TV screen or by pressing a button, and that document could be sent almost by magic through the electronic wire to many recipients at once. This sounded mind-blowing. Many technologists calculated that the average workday could be cut down to 1 or 2 hours. This led to major concerns about the future of jobs, but mostly people looked forward to the days when a 10-hour work week would become normalized and a relaxed and leisurely life would await us. Fast forward 36 years to today, and according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the average hours worked in the U.S. remains above 34 hours, with more than 97% of corporations enforcing a minimum 40-hour work week standard. That's not all. Stress caused by work in the U.S. is at an all-time high. According to the American Institute of Stress, 40% of workers report that their job is very or extremely stressful. 25% of those people, that's 1/4 of people, view their jobs as the number one stressor in their lives. 80% of workers feel stress on the job, and nearly half say they need help in learning how to manage that stress. So, what happened to that life of leisure we were all promised by the introduction of computers? It seems that productivity doesn't operate at a one-to-one scale. If a worker no longer has to spend 30 minutes making copies to a physical memo, it doesn't mean that worker can spend that 30 minutes relaxing in their cubicle. It means that employee has 30 more minutes to do more work. Now sending a message to other people in the organization, which took 30 minutes, only takes 1 minute, which means that employee can send 30 messages in the same period of time. So instead of employees getting 2 or 3 memos per day, they'll get 20 or 30 emails. Some might even get 200 or 300. And because it doesn't take nearly as long to respond to an email as it did a memo, that employee who used to find themselves writing 1 or 2 replies per day now writes dozens or hundreds of replies. The productivity for the employee has dramatically increased, and so has the cognitive workload. And it doesn't stop there. Every task that used to require the employee an hour or two to complete because of computers now just takes a few minutes means that today's employees are doing hundreds and hundreds of tasks in a single day. Tasks that workers in the 60s and 70s would take months to get done. Today's workers not only don't get to enjoy hours and hours of leisure because of technology, they often have far more intellectual bandwidth being used up at their day jobs. This often leaves less room for a life outside of work. And even when employees do clock out for the day, many workers just feel like they spend the remaining hours of their day recovering from their time spent at work. Oh, and it gets worse with cell phones. Employers of the past rarely expected that their employees be available for communication during non work hours. Yet today, as many as 60% of employers have admitted to, at one point or another, contacting their employees for work tasks on their personal cell phone. Half of those employers also reported that these requests happen after normal business hours. The American expectation that every person is always tethered to their cell phone often means employees never really feel like they're unplugged, even when they're clocked out and away from work. This especially applies to salaried employees, as the corporate expectation for salaried individuals is often that they be accessible 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, either via phone or corporate email, which is configured on employee cell phones. So even when workers clock out, they don't really get to clock out. Workers like salaried individuals never feel like they unplug. It's no wonder that stress levels are on the rise. According to a New York Post article, some workers even look forward to getting sick. 29% of people, that's nearly 1/3 of working individuals, actually welcome being sick from time to time in order to get some rest from their day job. For some people, getting sick is the only way to find time not to work, and it's the only way that they can rest guilt free because they know if you're sick, you shouldn't be working. Our devotion to work is also leading to health problems. Blue light from computers is being shown as damaging to vision. Over 50% of Americans are vitamin D deficient because they're not getting enough sun. Sitting is even now being declared as the new smoking. They're calling it the sitting disease. The inactivity caused from working from computers all day is leading to heart disease, diabetes, and all kinds of other mortality factors, which means it is not overly dramatic to say that if no steps are taken to find a way to work healthier, our jobs could literally kill us. Okay, so now that I've thoroughly bummed you out, let's talk about how we fix it. So lots of employers are recognizing these issues and they're offering healthy work solutions. Employers are offering flex schedules to allow daylight, exercise, and movement breaks during the day. Employers are offering standing desks to avoid the new sitting disease. Employers are offering remote work, which lends itself to better work environments. And one positive side effect of COVID is that remote work is now far more accepted than it's ever been. All of those things are great, but it's important that you and I don't just settle for attempts to fix the symptoms of a deeper problem. It's important for us to realize that we were born into a story that's already playing out with rules that were in place before we got here. The direction in which the American productivity machine is heading isn't healthy. You and I have to take some personal responsibility and make sure that we're not romanticizing work at the cost of our lives and that the time we're trading for money is actually worth it. The entrepreneurial community doesn't help us much in this effort. So many grind all day and work all night messages are hugely prevalent, especially in the side hustle space. You're meant to feel guilty if your side hustle doesn't eat up all of your spare time. Sure, there are times when you have to pull in extra hours to get your hustle off the ground, but if you sign up for an entire life of 80-hour work weeks, what is the point of having a side hustle to begin with? You might as well just go get a job where you can earn as much money as possible and kiss your personal freedom goodbye. So you and I have to ask the question, why do we have a side hustle? It's an important question. Hopefully the answer is to earn more money, which will lead us to not having to work as much later. We may have a goal to become financially independent so we don't have to rely on an employer handing out 40-hour work weeks for the rest of our lives. The goal is not to retire on a beach and sip margaritas. The goal is to have freedom and margin to do what we want to do with our life. To put it simply, we work to live. We don't live to work. If that's something you struggle with, maybe this story by Paulo Coelho will help. There once was a businessman who was sitting at the beach in a small Brazilian village. As he sat, he saw a Brazilian fisherman rowing a small boat towards the shore, having caught quite a few big fish. The businessman was impressed and asked the fisherman, "How long does it take you to catch so many fish?" The fisherman replied, "Oh, just a short while." "Then why don't you stay longer at sea and catch even more?" The businessman was astonished. "This is enough to feed my whole family," the fisherman said. The businessman then asked, "So what do you do for the rest of the day?" The fisherman replied, "Well, I usually wake up in the morning, go out to sea to catch a few fish. Then I go back and play with my kids. In the afternoon, I take a nap with my wife. And the evening comes, I join my buddies in the village for a drink. We play guitar, sing, and dance throughout the night." The businessman offered a suggestion to the fisherman. "I'm a PhD in business management. I can help you become a more successful person. From now on, you should spend more time at sea and try to catch as many fish as possible. When you've saved enough money, you could buy a bigger boat and catch even more fish. Soon you'll be able to afford to buy more boats, set up your own company, your own production plant for canned food, and a distribution network. By then, you will have moved out of this village to Sao Paulo, where you can set up headquarters to manage your other branches." And the fisherman asked, "And after that?" The businessman laughs heartily. "After that, you can live like a king in your own house, and when the time is right, you can go public and float your shares in the stock exchange, and you'll be rich." And the fisherman asked, "And after that?" The businessman says, "After that, you can finally retire and move to a house by a fishing village and wake up in the morning early and catch a few fish, and then return home to play with the kids and have a nice afternoon nap with your wife. And when evening comes, you can join your buddies for a drink and play the guitar and sing and dance throughout the night." The fisherman was puzzled. "Isn't that what I'm doing now?" That's it for today's show. If you think someone would like to hear this episode, please forward it to them. If opportunity doesn't come knocking, let's build a door.